Today, on Be Something Wonderful, insanely powerful manifesting and reality bending video, a must watch. I am your host, Tom Kearin, and this is the Be Something Wonderful studio of higher consciousness, where we help you level up and become the best version of yourself. Creators, welcome back to the studios of Be Something Wonderful here in Las Vegas. Big video today. I want to start with this client that said, Tom, I'm tired of imagining and trying to distort reality. And she went on, but to summarize it, she goes, if everybody is you pushed out, then I give up. Now, interesting use of words that she said, trying to distort reality. We're going to get into this because it reminded me of a video that I did probably a few years ago now, a story about Steve Jobs, the founder of the co-founder of Apple. And we'll talk about this, but there's this whole term associated with him called the reality distortion field. We're going to talk about this idea today, but as it relates to my client. Now remember, we're gonna really unpack this, but she had a long, complicated scene as well, her imaginal scene. And she was just getting tired. It wasn't coming from conviction. It was trying to make something happen. She's looking out there and seeing things that she doesn't believe, that she assumes should be in her reality. This whole idea of everyone is you pushed out. We're going to talk about that. And then the idea, remember, first of all, we're going to talk about the imaginal scene. To get it to, it should just be a very simple, insanely simple scene. That lasts maybe 2 to 3 seconds. 1, 2, 3, and it's done. Doesn't matter how many times you return to it, right? Keep it simple. If it's a new car, you're opening the door and getting in. If it's your SP, you're holding hands or kissing or seeing them across the room. If it's a new job, you're shaking hands with your coworkers or your colleagues or your team. If it's money, you're looking into your bank account and smiling. Anything like that, a very simple scene. We'll talk about this, right? And then this idea that, remember, you're not distorting reality. You're trying to distort reality when you believe in non-fulfillment, when you believe that you're not that person you already desire to be. That's a distortion. Fulfillment and already being that person you desire to be is reality. That's not distorted. So you're not distorting anything, right? We're going to talk about this idea. You're trying to distort reality when non-fulfillment and beliefs of I am not that person who I desire to be already is the distortion. We're going to talk about this idea. And this idea of everybody is you push out. Remember, being aware of reality is who you are. You are awareness of being. Just because you're aware of something, see something, even have an interaction with something, doesn't mean that's your choice. Doesn't mean you're identifying with that. The whole idea of anyone is you pushed out is all that is pushed out into all the people, events, and circumstances around you. And then your assumptions about that reality are pushed out. We're going to talk about these ideas and more. So let's hit it first. I am is true whether you believe it or not. That's your conviction of being. It's the truth, right? And she had this question, well, how do I know? What's the difference between my false and limiting beliefs and beliefs that are true beliefs? Well, we're going to talk about this. Remember, every other belief or assumption limits or distorts reality. The only truth, or the only belief that's a true belief is I am. Because why do we know that? Because you don't have to believe it for it to be true. Every other belief, every other false idea or limiting belief, you have to believe it for it to exist. I am is true whether you believe it or not. I am exists whether you believe it or not. It doesn't require your belief for it to exist. That's how you know. Every other belief is limiting, or what you might call a false belief, because it requires you to believe it to exist. Otherwise, there's no existence to it. So every other belief or assumption other than I am limits or distorts reality. You see, reality is not distorted. Reality is perfect. That's why Jesus said, be perfect as your Father in heaven. It's already perfect. Every other belief or limitation other than I am that person I desire to be is a limitation or false idea of reality. That's what distorts reality. I am that I am. I am who I am. That's the great I am. That's God to Moses. That's who you are. It's the one and only reality. It's very clear here what God's saying. I am the one and only reality. There's no other God. There's no other reality. There's no other truth. There's no other belief. There's no other assumption. There's no distortion here. There's no God besides me. There's no distortion, right? There's no one else like me. There's none like me. There's nothing but that ultimate reality. I am God. I am the Lord or the law. This is what Scripture says. It's very clear. No distortion there. So remember, we talked about levels of creation. I'm going to revisit them here just because it applies to what I talked about with this client. We really had a thorough session yesterday that really moved her. So you have ultimate reality. Everything is ultimate reality. 3D, 4D, 5D, it's all reality. There's only one reality. They're not realities. They're experiences of ultimate reality that we call realities or identities or film rolls or lifelines or scripts. But they're all just an experience of ultimate reality or source. 7 being that the levels of creation, 7 being I am, is the absolute. That's God, that's the Father, that's the law or the Lord. That's the isness or absoluteness of reality, of existence itself. That's life itself. That's pure awareness, the knowing, the conviction. Nothing opposes it. There's nothing opposite. That's what it is. It's all power. It's all knowing. It's all potential. Then you have the Son, the I am awareness, level 6. If you want to call it the first manifestation of God, that I am awareness, to be aware as the absolute, to be aware as the Father, of the Lord, of the law, or the isness. For that awareness to be aware of itself, that's the Son. It's the perfect expression of the law or the Lord or the Lord. I am being aware of itself. It's I am, the great I am, God, isness of reality, being aware of itself. Do you see it? Beingness. It's the knowing itself as that limitless power. So it's the knowing that you are limitless power, that you are limitless knowing, that you are limitless potential. That's the all that isness of reality is the Son. It's all that is, all possibilities. This is all power, all knowing, all potential, nothing outside of it. But this is I am awareness, that I am, who you are, being aware as that ultimate reality, as source. Knowing itself as that limitless power, that limitless knowing, that limitless potential. That's what all that is. It's the Son, right? And then you have level 5, the identity. Your I am identity, what Scripture calls the Son of Man. Jesus of Scripture. The Christ is the I am awareness, right? The Son, the perfect expression of the Lord or the law or of God, right? When Scripture says man was made in God's image, that's man, Christ, the perfect idea of man, right? The Son. And the Son of God is that perfect idea of man, the image of God in expression, the Son of Man. You in your physical experience, Jesus, right, of Scripture, God's Son in expression, knowing and being aware of itself experientially, in a physical experience or any other experience. This is one possibility, this 3D experience, right? But it could be other experiences. It's you aspiring to know its divine self, but subject to its own limitations. That's what the I am identity is. That's what the Son of Man, aspiring to know itself as that divine self, as the image of God, but subject to its own limitations, subject to its own identity, what it identifies with. That's powerful, with its own limitations. That's the whole idea of what we call self-concept that's taught by every spiritual teacher and coach. It's unlimited power in knowing, in potential. So that limitless power becomes unlimited as the Son of God. That all power becomes limitless power as the image, the perfect image of God, and unlimited as the Son of Man, or Christ in expression. I am awareness in expression in 3D, having a physical experience to know itself. That's powerful. We've talked about that idea, but probably never as clear as we did today, as we laid it out. The great paradox with this discussion is reconciled with the understanding of your true nature as I am awareness in expression. So what is the great paradox? Well, in Scripture it says, I and the Father are one, but my Father is greater than I. They've been trying to reconcile that for thousands of years. Right? What does that mean? Well, there it is. That's the great paradox. That's the great understanding of your true nature. It's you, as I am awareness in expression. It's the Son of God. Man was made in God's image, the Christ, the Son of God, the perfect image, perfect I am awareness. I am, or that great I am, aware of itself as the Son of God. And then in expression, in physical expression, is the Son of Man. Right? It's the Son of God in expression. That's how these two thoughts are reconciled. I and my Father are one. The Son of God and the Son of Man are not separate. Right? The Son of God's not separate. That I am awareness is not separate from that awareness. It's being aware as I am awareness. It's one with God. And that Son of Man's not separate from the Son of God. It's the Son of God in expression. But my Father is greater than I. That isness of reality, that absoluteness, the law of Scripture, the one and only reality, the all-knowing, the all-power is greater than any conception that you can have of that I am. Whether it's I am awareness as the Son of God, the perfect image, or that I am awareness in expression as the Son of Man. It's one, but the Father is always greater, but they're not separate. So it's still you as the Son of Man, one with all of it, all power, all knowing, all potential. So how do you know the difference between limiting or false beliefs or true beliefs? This was the question yesterday. The only true belief or truth is I am. Whether you believe it or not, I am, or I am awareness. That you are all realities, all identities, all things is the only truth, whether you believe it or not. All other beliefs would be considered limiting or false because they require you to believe them to exist, right? It requires you to identify as something, as Son of Man in expression, to limit yourself consciously, deliberately, to limit yourself to know that you're unlimited. That's why you do it. That's the whole idea of limiting beliefs, to limit yourself, to know yourself in expression, to know that you're that perfect image of God. I am is existence. And you can imagine and assume anything. But what you can't imagine or assume is that you don't exist. That's how you know. Do you see it? You can't possibly assume or imagine that you don't exist. You might be able to imagine, assume the death experience or the death transition. But you can't ever imagine or assume that you don't exist. That's how you know. That's the true belief, the only true belief. Everything else is limiting or false. In other words, it's not your true nature. It's a way to know yourself as one with the Father, to know yourself as made in the perfect image of God. For the Son of Man to know itself as the Son of God and one with all that is and one with Source. That's powerful today. So, as I am awareness or all that is, you can be aware of anything. With God, all things are possible because you are all things and you are all possibilities. You are all knowing. But to know it experientially, hear it. To know it experientially, you identify with it and as this I am identity. In other words, you assume and believe it. That awareness becomes a believed or assumed experience. Wow. So as I am awareness, you can be aware of all things. That's what I am aware, because you are awareness. You are all things. So being aware of something doesn't mean you necessarily take on that identity or believe it or assume it. Remember, awareness is, you go beyond belief because awareness is reality. But when you identify with it, when you decide to assume and believe it, then you take that on. It becomes a believed and assumed experience. That's the whole idea of everybody is you pushed out. It means that you, as I am awareness, as all that is, as the Son of God in expression, as the Son of Man in physical expression, are experiencing yourself from infinite vantage points and viewpoints and perspectives. It's all that is. Infinite points of one awareness, I am, and consciousness. Everything and everybody is that, all that is pushed out, right? Infinite identities as the Son of Man. I am awareness in expression. That's the true meaning. So just because you see something that's not something that you would identify with or assume or want, doesn't mean that's you. It means it doesn't mean it's the 3D personality you, but it is all that is experiencing itself through you as you. Do you see it? So whether you identify with it and become it and take that on as the Son of Man and as a physical experience is up to you. But everybody as you pushed out means you can be aware of it all because you are it all. So let's hit this a little bit more. As that I am identity and physical personality, you will be aware of people, events, and circumstances that you identify with. In other words, that you believe and assume. And you'll be aware of people, events, and circumstances that you don't identify with, that you decide that you don't believe in or assume. Both serve you, though, as all that is, hear this, to know yourself experientially as source. They both serve you. So just the idea of everyone is you pushed out doesn't mean, for example, this person was talking about someone in their family that was verbally abusive. Well, I'm not verbally abusive. I know, I believe that, I get that. But because you're seeing that means do you hear it? It strengthens your identity as someone who is not verbally abusive. So that everyone is you pushed out. That's one aspect of all that is. A person that has that experience, a person that identifies as that type of personality. Do you see it? So it's still all of you, but you get to choose within that physical experience, within that physical personality, who you are, right? Who do you say you are? So it's all to serve you, right? Whether those people, events, and circumstances, whether you're identifying, believing, and assuming from that vantage point, or you're seeing it from the vantage point that that's not who I am, that's not what I want to be. Both serve you to know yourself as all that is, as source, within your chosen I am identity. So it's still everybody is you pushed out. It's all that is. It has to be. There's only one thing. That's God. That's I am awareness. It's God pushed out everywhere. It's I am awareness pushed out everywhere and everything. It's all that is, seeing itself from infinite vantage points and viewpoints in the people, events, and circumstances. That's why everyone is you pushed out. That's what everyone is you pushed out really means. You are you and they are them, right, in that experience. But it's all you. It's all I am. It's all that is. There's no separation. Do you see it? But in that individual experience, there is an individual point of consciousness experiencing itself. Okay, so naturally, you will see your assumptions of both who you assume and believe you are and who you assume and believe you are not. And you'll see both of these pushed out into the people, events, and circumstances around you. I don't think we've ever talked about everyone as you pushed out more clearly than in this moment. Right? All to know and to remember who you really are as I am awareness. That's big. Okay, let's continue. So you are limiting, are you limiting or distorting reality? Well, yes. But that's how you experience or know yourself as reality. Do you see it? Yes, you are, because all that is perfect. Be perfect as your Father in heaven is perfect. You distort it, put limitations on it, believe things, assume things, take on an identity, right? To experience yourself as that source, as that I am, as that person or man made in the image of God, right? To experience yourself as that Christ, right? The Son of Man in expression. But limit it or distort it by refusing, but hear this. So yes, that's true, but now you can consciously and deliberately limit it or distort it by refusing to believe in other words, refusing to identify with, accept, or agree with any limitation or any distortion that's not aligned with your ideal identity and reality. Do you hear this? This is so big. So yes, but distorted by refusing to believe that you're limited, by refusing to believe that any limitation, any distortion, any assumption that doesn't align with who you want to be in the moment, your ideal identity and experience of reality, distort it that way by not identifying with it, by not believing it. In other words, limit or distort reality from the vantage point, viewpoint, or perspective of being absolutely unlimited. Wow, that's big. Distorted by being from that vantage point of being unlimited. You are all, that's why Neville Goddard said, you're already that which you want to be, and your refusal to believe it is the only reason you do not see it. So refuse to believe in limitations then. Refuse to believe in smallness. Refuse to believe in doubt, in fear, in being small and limited and not living the life you want. Refuse to believe that. And you won't see it, any of those limitations. That's a powerful notion today. So let's go on. There's this term that I talked about in a video a few years ago. I talked about the story of Steve Jobs. And again, on that video, some of you were going into other topics that's not really it's not relevant to this discussion. Whether you believe Steve Jobs was a good CEO or a bad CEO, or a good person or bad person, is irrelevant to this discussion. Whether you believe that he could have prevented his death transition or whatever is irrelevant to this discussion. You can't know what his intentions were. You can't know what he wanted to create. So forget about that. Leave that for the channels and the things like Reddit that you like to debate that stuff. That's irrelevant. What we're talking about, this term, reality distortion field, was associated with Apple, the co-founder Steve Jobs. And hear this, his refusal to accept any limitations that stood in the way of his ideas about reality. Wow. Do you see it? They called it a reality distortion field because they believed that he distorted reality to form it to what he believed and assumed and imagined, his vision. Well, that's what creating your own reality is, right? And this is what Bud Tribble, I guess he was a software engineer at the time, said, in his presence, reality is malleable. It wears off when he's not around. Well, of course, because you are reality. You create your own reality. So it's not so much that it wears off, but Steve Jobs creates his own reality. That's his reality, not yours, right? I believe that Bud Tribble got this idea from Star Wars, the reality distortion field. And so his assumptions, beliefs, and what was possible, he had that absolute conviction of being, that I amness, that charisma or vision of I am. Hear it. They said he was very charismatic with his ideas, that he would bend reality, that he would influence people to believe all things were possible. But remember, you're not influencing anyone. You're creating a reality, moving to a reality where there's a version of them that believes all things are possible. That's what Steve did here. Right? He refused to accept any limitation. His assumptions of belief of what was possible is that all things are possible, that I create my own reality, that I bend reality, that I bend it to what I want it to be. Absolute conviction of being that got translated in the 3D idea of charisma. But that's what charisma is, right? It's you being authentic to yourself by saying, this is what I want to be. This is who I want to be. This is what I want to create. That's charisma. That's charisma of source, of bending reality, of what they call distorting it. But remember, you're not really, you're distorting 3D reality. Right? 3D reality is the distortion. Limitations are the distortion. Right? Being small is a distortion. Thinking that there's things that are impossible is a distortion of reality. This is very powerful today. So Steve Jobs understood that reality, Your experience of reality, in other words, is what you say it is. He created his own version of reality, that reality distortion field that they called it, where seeming barriers and limits were broken, right? The impossible became possible around him, right? Where the impossible became possible. He distorted the imposed. Here's what he did. What's the distortion? He distorted the imposed limitations, assumptions, and beliefs of the 3D world. Wow. It's not, of course, the 3D personality is saying that he had a distorted reality. But really, it's the reality of things are impossible. That's a distortion. That there are limits, that you can't have what you want. Remember, it's not an effect or influence that wears off, this reality distortion field, like Bud talked about, right? That engineer, I think it's Bud or Bob, Bud or Bob, that effect or influence that wears off, but rather it's a version of the people, events, and conditions created by Steve Jobs' vision of himself in reality. He had that vision of himself in reality. That's a perfect expression of what everyone as you pushed out means. His identity, his vision and beliefs were pushed out into the people, events, and circumstances around him. Wow. In other words, he moved to that version of reality where they believed in it, where he convinced that, where they were convinced, right? He wasn't influencing a reality or a version of events. He was creating a new version, a new reality. That's powerful. That's so powerful. Jobs got it, that 3D reality doesn't exist outside of your perception and experience of it. So Steve wasn't distorting reality, but rather seeing clearly the infinite potential and possibilities of reality. Wow. He distorted the imposed, fixed beliefs and assumptions and limitations of the 3D world and saw, created, perceived, and manifested reality according to his imaginal vision and desired end. That's powerful, right? His conviction, his I am identity, that all things are possible, created a world and version of others that were convinced of his vision, where all things were possible. The paradox is the reality creation field is anything that puts limits on God. That's the distortion. Anything that puts limits on I am awareness, anything that puts limits on you as an I am identity is the distortion, because you're absolutely, wholly unlimited. That's powerful. Okay, so, and so how do you do it? Well, in that video a couple of years ago, I've talked about this AIM method before in plenty of videos. But what I want you to do, what I've talked to her about, is suspend the whole idea of belief altogether. Belief or disbelief doesn't matter. It's irrelevant, because that's the distortion. Whether you believe or disbelieve is the distortion of reality, because it is what it is. I am exists and will always exist. All possibilities exist whether you believe it or not. Instead, assume, imagine, and move in that knowing. Move in that new reality. Move in that new conviction. Assume and create. Remember this idea that I talked about, that you create a portal, or in other words, a reality distortion field, or a new reality, when you assume it, imagine it, and move within it, and move as it. Right? You bend or distort reality, but really you're just bending and distorting those limiting assumptions, what you think are limits. Your focus is on that wish fulfilled. Your focus is on your vision of who you are. Like Steve Jobs, focus on that vision of who he is, what he wants, his vision for reality and his products and everything else, right? So assume it, imagine it, and then move within it as it. Create a scene. This is what we really got to. Her scenes were long. Create a scene so simple that it takes just a few seconds to form. There are a lot of spiritual teachers that talk about the 2-second method. I think they're out there. But that's not new. That's been out a while now. Or it's been talked about, right? Just counting 1, 2, right? Create your, if it's love, imagine you're holding hands with your specific person. These are just examples. You can come up with your own. 1, 2, done, right? It doesn't matter. Remember, it doesn't matter how many times you revisit it. Revisit as much as you want, but just keep it a couple of seconds. 1 to 3 seconds. 1, 2, 3, we're holding hands. And get that image. If it's a home, walk through the front door. 1, 2, 3. You're through the front door. You saw it. You did it. You went there. You created it. It's done. right? If it's a business or a career, and see yourself at the office, see yourself shaking hands with your colleagues or a boss, right? If it's money, see that balance, see that bank balance, right? Or see yourself boarding a train or a plane and traveling, feeling that abundance, right? If it's health, look in the mirror and see yourself beaming, right? See yourself, a couple seconds, 1, 2, and you're done. Then revisit that 1 to 2 second scene as much as you want. You can't get exhausted or be tired of anything when you do that. That's reality. And then move within that new identity. Move within that new reality. Distort it, create it, be it. This is so powerful today. I'm very excited about this. Assume you're already that person you want to be. Assume that nothing's impossible. Right? The AIM method. Assume that 3D reality is malleable and always changing. Assume that thoughts of fear, doubt, and non-fulfillment are the only distortion. They're the distortion. Imagine a scene so insanely simple that it only takes a few seconds, and then revisit it whenever you want. Your source, it doesn't matter, you're God. Know that the scene is reality and you're imagining of it. And it was before you even imagined it. Right? Move as that new identity and reality, no matter what. No matter what the limitations or doubts or fears or thoughts. Create your own reality distortion field, right? And remember, any thoughts, fears, feelings, conditions that appear, anything that's not aligned with your desired and is the distortion. Refuse those. As Steve Jobs said, he refused anything that would distort his view of who he is and reality. Wow. That's really the true nature of all that. That's an insanely powerful manifesting a reality bending video. That's a must watch. I am your host, Tom Kearin, and this is the Be Something Wonderful studio of higher consciousness, where we help you level up and become the best version of yourself. Creators, thank you. Thank you for being with me. Thank you for liking and sharing and commenting on the videos. Thank you for being part of our Facebook group, The Ambassadors, at facebook.com/groups/Be Something Wonderful, for joining us on our Instagram at Tom Kearin, Twitter at Tom Kearin, TikTok at Be Something Wonderful. We have a Facebook organization page at Be Something Wonderful. It's got a lot of 101,000 people have liked it or are following it, I guess. So you can find us anywhere on social media at either Tom Kearin or Be Something Wonderful. And also we have our membership channel that has specific content for the members. Yeah, it's a lot of the same messages, but just in a different way like we always do. And every month, just about every month, we have a live stream specifically for the members, broadcast on the Be Something Wonderful membership channel. And we have another one scheduled for this month, Saturday, March 30th, just before Easter. We're going to go live to you right here from the studios of Be Something Wonderful at 9 a.m. Pacific Coast Standard Time. I will be announcing that. Look for that coming, the announcement. Send your questions and your topics that you want to discuss to info@besomethingwonderful.com. Creators, with great love, with great light, and infinite gratitude. This is Tom Kearin here in the studios of Be Something Wonderful in Las Vegas. Until next time, we'll see you soon.